Good morning, everyone. I am not Silvia. So, I want that to be very clear, especially in these days when people, okay. So I will be moderating the session, and I have not done a revolution to Silvia, but no problem at all. My name is Robert Vitillo, and I serve as the Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission. And in my own name and in the name of the Future of Work, Labor After Laudato Si initiative, and in the name of my own organization, ICMC, I'd like to thank Bruno and Rodrigo and UNIAPAC members for the honor and privilege of moderating this panel discussion on sustainable economy and decent work. Both His Holiness Pope Francis and our presider at Mass yesterday, His Eminence Cardinal Michael Czerny, already have nourished our thinking on these topics. And of course, the first session this morning was very, very prophetic on these topics as well. And I want to note that Professor Zamagni is also the President Emeritus of ICMC too. So thank you for your contribution to my own organization. And so I ask you to recall all these words that we've been hearing during this time and have that nourish us for this discussion. We have three eminent members of the panel, or four eminent members of the panel. So I won't take a lot of time to introduce them. I'll just simply give you the names and their titles in their organizations, but you can read much more about them in the biographies that were provided to us. So we have Silvia Bulla from Argentina, the managing partner of the International Flavors and Fragrances. We have Esther Lynch from Ireland, and she's the Deputy Secretary General of ETUC, which Bruno has already mentioned, the excellent article that fed into the title for our overall gathering these days. And then Sister Alessandra Smerilli from Italy and Vatican City, and she is the Secretary of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, and I'm honored to be a member of that Dicastery and to work closely with Sister Alessandra on many things. And then we have also Arturo Zapata from Mexico, and he's the CEO of the Corporación Zapata, and he's also an academic, which we will be treated to as well on the second round of questions. So I'll make just a few brief points. One is that today is the feast of St. John Paul II, who for many of us was such a source of consistent teaching on the dignity of human life from conception to natural death, and of the principles of justice underlying both the business world and on the intrinsic and inseparable relationship between labor and business. He often reminded us that we Christians are Easter people and that our song is Alleluia. So let us sing that song even as we reflect on the challenges confronting labor and business in today's fractured world. I wanted to mention a little bit about the Future of Work, Labor After Laudato Si initiative, in which UNIAPAC has been engaged during the past 5 years. This effort involved collaboration of some 30 global Catholic-inspired organizations. We launched 7 research tracks, did capacity building with our own memberships and across our organizational fields. In late 2020, we released a summary of all those activities under the title of the main theme that emerged in our various findings and activities. Care is work, work is care. And as Pope Francis reminded us yesterday, this does not only involve assistance work, which we usually associate with care work, but all work must be caring, and all care should be considered and categorized as work. And that includes entrepreneurship activities. We're about to launch this second phase of this initiative, and we sincerely hope that UNIAPAC will remain as an active and important participant. In the second phase, we will be promoting common social discernment on how to build global transformative communities. You engaged in some similar discernment or synodality yesterday. But I heard little about labor in those discussions, and little about being sure that your efforts will be transformative of the fragmented and conflicted world of today. And so I see this theme of this panel discussion as essential to your efforts to growth and to make sustainable both UNIAPAC and the related world of both business and labor. In our discussions prior to today, the participants agreed to focus on two questions from their respective visions and experiences. And I'll be very strict in asking them to offer their responses for 5 minutes. There's one exception on the second round, and I'll announce that, since I want to be sure that we have some time for wider discussion. So I will use this bell as they approach their time limits, and I beg their forgiveness to be so rigid about the time. So the first question that we're going to talk about is what specific practical contributions can be made by entrepreneurs and workers in shaping a sustainable future? What business models are conducive to taking greater account of the environment, facilitate sustainable creation of wealth, just distribution of wealth, and ensure integral human development? And are these approaches responsive to current issues, for instance, energy crisis, war, inflation? So that's a big, long question, and I'm going to ask the participants in the discussion, or the panelists, to restrict their time to 5 minutes so we can leave time to have some wider discussion later. So, Silvia, in our discussions prior to this, you talked about the engagement of Christian business leaders in Argentina and in other parts of Latin America to address increasing poverty in Latin America, the problems of families, assist workers in the informal sector, and coach young people to improve their business skills and experiences. Could you share a bit about that with us now?
Thank you, Robert. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel. Well, we entrepreneurs and business leaders must provide dignified, decent, and equitable work to contribute to a fair and equitable society. We can become chain agents, not just to develop our own businesses, our own companies, but also to provide help when the people and the society needs. Beyond our main responsibility, we can provide decent work in our companies, but also help the other people to develop. It could be in our formal channels, but also we can help in the informal economy that is part of our societies. I will provide 2 examples of things that we are doing in Argentina, and I think that it is part of what we can do in other places of the world, and what I hear from this day is what other UNIAPACs is doing in other places of the world. So, well, in 1946, Pope Pius XII asked 2 cardinals in Argentina for cooperation to provide food for Europe. This cardinal formed a commission to help Europe, and there was a sub-commission that was created with a young leader. It was Enrique Shaw who led that commission at that moment of the history. It was a group of industrial and businessmen from Argentina who had that mission to collect clothes, food, and money. Enrique Shaw said that that commission was the seed for ACDE to be created. And creating ACDE, it was almost 70 years ago. It was, in a month, we will achieve in that moment of the 70th anniversary. In March 2020, when the seriousness of the effects of COVID began in Europe, and we start hearing what's happening in Europe, a Jesuit priest, Rodrigo Sarazaga from Argentina, asked business leaders from a lot of organizations and also from ACDE to collaborate in a very, very huge effort that was called Seamos Uno. It was a very famous campaign in Argentina. We have collected 1 million boxes It was 55 food rations for the families in Argentina that were facing the most severe moment because of not just COVID, but the quarantines the lockdowns were very strict in Argentina. So we from ACDE helped that organizing EPIC for that moment. That was a help for the urgency. When we were working on that effort, we were thinking, we are now providing food, but we need to do something else. We are business person. We can put the technologies, we can put our own skills, our time, our money, but we need to do something else for the people that will have the worst consequence of this pandemic and also the lockdowns. So what we learned from that effort, we learned that working in partnership with other entrepreneurs from other chambers, all the community, the business community, we have a bigger impact. We can meet with others and make a bigger impact, not just we Christians, but also a lot of people of other associations helped. We also learned that we can apply our networks, our technologies, our skills, but not just for our business world, but to help other people and to create other opportunities for people. And we learned that there are a lot of good people that can help us also. So we asked help from sports people, Ginobili, Schwarzman, Sabatini, Cambiaso, a lot of people that from other areas that helped us achieve our help. But what we are doing now, because that was an effort, a unique effort in a unique moment, well, inequity, poverty, and exclusion is still there. The consequence of pandemic make it bigger, the problem. So what we are doing now, we in ACDE have a group of lawyers. They are helping pro bono a lot of people, poor people, to run their businesses, to help them to have access to justice without cost. And that's a very important effort for us. And I think that other lawyers from other associations are following these young lawyers that are doing great efforts for connecting the poor with the justice. So for us, it's a very unique a thing that our organization is doing. Another thing that is for us a very important effort is that we are providing coaching to business people from the informal economy to make them become, first of all, acquire more skills, and then also to run their businesses in a way that they can become bigger, gain scale, and then move to the formal economy. So that for us, it's a very important way of helping the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia. And now, Arturo, could you speak with us about your engagement with a group focusing on empresas y ingresos dignos, which maintains that no one in Mexico should be unable to live as a middle-class person?
Thank you, Monsignor. Hello?
I think you're...
Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you. Buongiorno, everybody. And I want to say first that I'm extremely honored to be sharing this panel, obviously, with Monsignor Robert and Silvia, Esther, and Alessandra. I want to say I'm a father to 3 young adults and married to an extraordinary woman. And I want to say that, in full disclosure, I have a mental framework distortion because I've been a professor at the university for as long as I've been in business. So this sometimes I wonder if my capacity to do things is the same. I do, and then I look back and analyze what I just did. And that has been my life, and my wife sometimes laughs at me, and I think she's absolutely right to do so. In line with most of you, I have concluded that for the past 35 years, we as entrepreneurs and business people lost focus on the why we were doing what we were doing. We focused so much on the what and the how that we literally stopped thinking about the why we were doing what we were doing in the first place. The justification, or at least the explanation, is the exponential growth of complexity being faced by companies. The challenges that companies face today from everywhere, forget about their own markets, from abroad in technology terms, in the dynamics of the companies, is such that this was actually the motivation for Milton Friedman in proposing the simplification of the business mission. I don't think he was being evil. I think he just reached the conclusion that it was just too complex for the leaders of a company to focus on many things at the same time. He did that without knowing what the consequence would be of such recommendation. I will have a chance to, my second opportunity to address that a little deeper. I just want to say that we are now keenly aware of the consequences. In order to start the process of healing, I believe that we must take back the why of our businesses and our entrepreneurial activity. And I believe it is embraced or based on the concept of conscious business. So in some instances, it's presented as conscious capitalism. I have learned that we must often fall and be shaken in order to acknowledge that we need to change. And I believe that we are at that moment. We are at that moment, and we have the challenge. And we as organized society, and we as business people and entrepreneurs have the opportunity to bring back the essence of free enterprise, or to finally be the ones that put the knife at the heart of free enterprise and kill it forever.
Thank you very much, Arturo. It's wonderful to have somebody summarize so well and so quickly. So. And Esther, during our discussions, you certainly focused a great deal on the need to pay a dignified wage that enables workers to pay for energy and food and family needs, and to have the agency to negotiate one's salary, and the need to increase social dialogue. And I have to say, as one who's always been aside to both Caritas and now ICMC for the 50 years of my priestly ministry, I was shocked at some of the statistics you told us in our recent conversation, especially around the energy bills. So could you please share more with us?
So, good morning, and it's always a privilege to be able to represent 54 million union members and their unions coming from the ETUC. But it's a huge honor for me to be able to do it and to be invited to do it here today. And the reason I was anxious to be here was because I want to begin by saying thank you. I want to thank you for your leadership, because at the moment when the politicians were anxious and nervous about whether to introduce a law for Europe to say that minimum wages should be fair, you guys showed up and helped us win that struggle. And I really want to underscore what the professor said. You need to be everywhere. Your voice is critically important, because it's the voice of ethical business, and we really need that, and there needs to be enough space given to that voice. So thank you again for showing up for the minimum wage. And that's a legacy that will have a real impact in workers' lives, because at the moment we're suffering throughout the world a cost of living crisis. The cost of living crisis is a daily misery for workers, often the workers who work hardest. I've been a minimum wage worker. It was the hardest work I ever did. It was a struggle to feed my family, and it was a struggle to keep the dignity and hope for myself. Very, very hard to put myself through law school at night while being a minimum wage worker and bring up my family as well. So I know just how hard people work on minimum wage, and that's why I'm absolutely dedicated to make sure that throughout the world wages are fair. And how do we make wages fair? Well, the main way we make wages fair is we bargain. The way in which we make sure that workers are getting the fair share of the profits that they're creating is employers and workers sit down together and they say, well, what's a fair share of this? All too often, employers are not available for that discussion. And so again, I want to thank you in your leadership for saying very clearly that employers should be available for that discussion. That workers turn up, they give the best of themselves every day, and they turn up to make sure that they deliver a good outcome for the enterprise, and that needs to be rewarded in terms of a negotiated, bargained wage. At the moment, the trade unions are focusing very clearly on measures to increase those lowest wages, though. And the reason we're doing that is because some of the facts that are coming forward are very worrying. The human rights standard for a minimum wage is that you should have to work 20 days to be able to afford your electricity bill, for example. Workers in the Czech Republic right now have to work 60 days. So things are well out of the ability of the family to manage to make ends meet, no matter how good you are at turning off the lights, no matter how good you are at trying to manage things, you just can't afford to make ends meet. Trade unions are also involved in providing food banks. And I've been talking to some of those people who are providing food in the food banks. And what they're telling me is they're saying, Esther, we're worried now that the type of food we're giving to people, they can't afford to cook it. So they're having to think about what type of food can be given for free in the food bank. So the crisis is serious in its immediate and it's now. And that's why for minimum wages, we're saying to politicians everywhere, is that you need to take steps now to make sure that people can make ends meet. Because I know the people who are not paying minimum wage never show up at meetings like this. They're not people who it's easy to persuade by means of what's your role in society, what's the purpose of growth, what's the purpose of work. They're people who would pay less except for the law won't allow them to. And they're also organizations, companies, that are making so much profits they can afford to go to the moon for the weekend. And they're not being taxed properly either. And they're also often people who are putting pressures on all of you in terms of the payment schedules, the date on which they'll pay, the way in which they pay, the way in which they won't pay, the squeeze on the margins. So there's a lot of shared interest between entrepreneurs interested in business and the role of business in the world and the role of business in supporting human development, and trade unions equally interested in that question. So finally, just to thank you again for having me here, for working with us on those critical questions on which we can agree, and for being available to bargain with workers on their pay so that they can have decent work.
Thank you very much, Esther. And Sister Alessandra, since you arrived in the Dicastery and now are in leadership at the Dicastery, I've had the honor of being in many, many meetings with you, maybe too many for you to tolerate me in those meetings. But there's two topics that I always see the special smile that you have and more light in your eyes when we're talking about those. And that is the role of young people in promoting and putting sustainable development to action, and then the Economia di Francesco. And so I wonder if you could share with us your perspectives on those two topics.
Thank you. I'm a Salesian sister, so young people are in my heart for this reason. First of all, let me say something about sustainable future. because the first line of your question was sustainable future. Because we know that sustainability is a multi-dimensional concept. And during the Economia of Francesco gathering, Pope Francis was speaking about sustainability in all dimensions. First of all, you know, we can say that something about economic sustainability, but I'm not going to say something because you know better than me about this issue. But sustainability is also environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and we know that so a sustainable future is a future in which the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth is less loud, less strong, and you can do something about this. But sustainability, Pope Francis said, is also relational and, most of all, spiritual. I will quote to young people, he said, there is a spiritual unsustainability to our capitalism. Human beings created in the image and likeness of God are seekers of meaning before being seekers of material good. So I think you have a role, you can play a role in maintaining this spiritual capital alive in our societies with your business, because you have the grace of being people of faith and running business. And this is a major responsibility for you. And in order to ensure a sustainable future, we need, you can play a key role because you can be faster than other institutions in doing that. The courage of change means that you can do something right now without waiting for other institutions, big events. You can do something right now. And in this way, you know better than me what it means in your daily life to leave no one behind when the costs of energy are increasing, when a pandemic drastically reduced the demand for goods and services that many of you produces. You know what this means when you are trying to leave no one behind. And let me share something. I was speaking with a CEO of one of the biggest companies a few days ago, and he was proud to tell me that they are giving back to the community the 4% of their shares, their profit. And I said, I think this is not enough. And he said, why? I said, you should work in a way, if you run your business in a good way, you will reduce the need for this percentage to give back to the community. And so you might ask yourself, what I'm doing in order to reduce the number of marginalized people, the number of excluded people. And a deeper question is to ask yourself if, even unintentionally, your businesses are contributing to create something that you want to fix. And I think this is very important. A sign of hope, going back to your question, is this group, more than 2,000 young people, entrepreneurs and economists and change makers gathered in Assisi last September, but this gathering was a result of 2 years of a process in which they have been working in specific topics, divided into groups, trying to bring together ideas, proposals, and to start something. So in Assisi, they shared what they are thinking, but also what they are doing to, was the call they received from the Pope in 2019, to change the today economy and to give a soul to the economy, for the future economy. I know that yesterday Pope Francis told you that you can do something in order to build an alliance with these young people. And in his speech to them, Pope Francis said, we are grateful to God that you are here. Not only will you be there tomorrow, you are here today. You are not just the not yet, you are also the already here, you are the present. And I think we need to avoid a mistake, which is to think about young people as the future. They are the present, they are our present, they are they are people we can help. And so I ask you, I beg you, to build an alliance with these young people. I think this can be a mutual advantage. Why? Because you can give them your experience, your capital. I mean, not money, but your capital of the big experience you have accumulated to 250 years. But they can give you fresh ideas, but not only ideas, proposals, projects, and they can be, they can help you to have this courage to change. And as Dicastery, we can help being a hub in which we can help you to connect with them. And I think this can be a concrete sign, a concrete proposal coming from this meeting. And so I say in advance, thank you for your help.
Thank you very much. Yes, Bruno.
May I ask just a moment, humbly asking for forgiveness for my mistakes before, and just complimenting a little bit. Well, first of all, thank you very much for all your participations, and I'm totally in agreement with most of it, or all of it. But I would like to specify something that I had talked with Esther when we were building the article, and she said that we were support for the minimum salary. This is not true. What she asked me was if I was against or for the minimum salary. I'm totally against for the minimum salary. I'm for a dignified salary. That is exactly what I said. If you remember well, I think we wrote that exactly, which is very important. One thing she didn't say, but she only had 5 minutes, so it was difficult, is that there are also some changes that we need from the workers. They have to feel the company is the most important thing they have, and they have to defend the company, to promote it, to guarantee their future. This is also very important, and I think this is the way forward. Just a little note on something. You mentioned that politicians are not looking into the solution for the people that are suffering, and it is true. We have a socialist government in Portugal. They just organized a meeting with employers, and they finalized by saying that the raise on salaries will be 2 points below inflation. I don't understand this. Why would be the employees to pay the cost of the inflation once they were not responsible? The responsibility comes from the pandemic first, with China closing. It comes from the logistics problem that we faced all over the world. Then it came from Ukraine with the war and the raise on cereals and the raise on petrol and energy and all that. And worse than all, we had the biggest drought all over the world last year. Altogether, this brought us the inflation. But on the other side, most of the companies and most of the economies this year had a fantastic performance. Why couldn't we give the minimum equilibrium on the growth of the salaries of our people? This is, for me, a totally nonsense. I just wrote this in Portugal, and I think that I should share this with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruno. And now we're going to go to our second question, which is what specific actions can be taken both by business sector and labor, respectively, to rebuild the social contract? And this is going to be the exception for 2 extra minutes for Arturo, since he's going to speak to us now as an academic and share some of his research that he's done on why we're in the situation we're in right now. And you've addressed that too, all of you have. And then also, then we'll have some reactions to that with the particular perspectives of the other participants. So Arturo, the floor is yours. And I think we have the slides.
Hello? Yeah, I just want to clarify, I can't speak just as an academic. I will and will always be both an academic and as a businessman, and that's the way I think. I want to share just some slides and take you through a little process that we've gone through together with a group of businessmen in Mexico to try to address this, understand it, and move forward with it. Yeah, I'll tap here if that works. So, for the past 10,000 years, the world's annual income per capita remained unchanged at around 450,000 years. That's the analysis that has been. We are able to go back 10,000 years, and based on what's left, we can conclude that $450 per year per person is basically survival. Is having to eat what you were going to eat the next day and nothing more. That was all the empires, the Chinese, the Persian, the Greek, the Roman empires and everything, that never changed the well-being of people until something happened in the late 18th century. This is what happened in 200 years. We are approaching and using exactly the same constant purchasing power parity. We're going to approach from 450 to close to 8,000 per capita. This has happened at the time when the population growth has multiplied, or the people on the planet have multiplied by 19 times, and the income by 22 times. So you can multiply 19 and 22, and that's the wealth that has been created in the last 200 years. And that is because of free enterprise. General well-being exploded, leading to the development of the middle class. The middle class is a result of free enterprise. Please. Income inequality started to shrink in a very significant way. And this trend continued up, and we already talked about that, until Milton Friedman proposed a new vision for the business enterprise. Again, I'm going to say that he did it for the right reason. He wanted to reduce complexity for the leaders of a company. He said the only social responsibility of business is to generate profits. Derived from this new proposal, the mission statement of millions of companies all over the world was simplified as follows: to maximize the return on equity of the shareholders. Because I visit my customers throughout Mexico and Latin America, when I go and present our company, they usually tell me, may I also give you a brief presentation on ours, which I'm delighted to. And if I told you that 9 out of 10 have this as their mission statement, I would be underrepresenting how many companies have this as their mission statement. This is what has happened in 35 years. When I told you 35 years, we kind of lost our meaning. This is compounded cumulative increase in real terms of personal income in the US, is the data that I was able to gather, between 1978 and 2013, 35 years. Compounded, the income of the workers has increased by 10%. And the leadership, I put it together as CEO and CFO, the leadership has multiplied by 937%. 50% of Americans have less than $400 in their bank accounts and could not gather $2,000 in 30 days if they had an emergency. This is half the citizens in the US, the richest country on the planet. Now, I am using the US as an example because as a nation, it keeps statistics on everything. However, the problem is omnipresent and is greatly exacerbated in the developing world. Just to illustrate a dramatic example, I'm going to talk about my own country. Over 40% of all workers with a full-time job in the formal sector of the economy live in some degree of poverty, including some of them in abject poverty with a full-time job. The free market economy is not only the most formidable engine of growth, innovation, and entrepreneurship that humanity has ever conceived. It is also the most powerful tool to value limited resources and to promote the reassignment of these resources to solve scarcity and inefficiencies. And yet, that same free market economy has utterly failed at valuing abundant or omnipresent resources, amongst them air, water, and in this case, unqualified labor. From a simple conceptual point of view of the reason of being of our companies, the idea that several of our employees live in poverty and have lost all hope that one day they will get out of it begs the conclusion that something is particularly wrong with our model. When we are proud and we talk about our companies and we're one of the best 50 companies to work for in our country, and we are at the same time gaining market share, and we are so proud of what we built, and we are just not asking ourselves the question, and this is what I was confronted with, and I had it in my own company. So this is not someone who comes to tell you that I always had it clear. I was pursuing all these goals. I was absolutely proud of what we were achieving, and I never stopped to question, never asked myself the question, is everybody that works in our company getting or achieving their own, at least what we call a dignified income? Even more concerning, if we were to do a survey of how this dynamic differs between companies who are owned by and or run by Catholic leaders, we would find that while there are exceptions, statistically, there is no difference. And that should shake us to the bone. Allow me to put forward an idea to confront and address this reality. We created something that we call Empresas de Ingreso Digno, and the objective is the following: a reality where everybody who has a full-time job in the private sector has access over time to a dignified level of life, or in other words, a middle-class standard of living. This doesn't resolve all the issues of our society, and Monsignor Robert mentioned that I had a proposal for everybody. I don't have a proposal for everybody. I just want to offer a proposal for everybody that has a full-time job in the private sector. We as business people, particularly us as Catholic business people, have the capacity to make this happen. We just need to commit. It was with this vision in mind that we launched in Mexico an initiative where more than 400 large and medium-sized companies, both local and global, have committed to embrace this goal. And what does it entail? In essence, it establishes a transition period with the goal of ensuring that by the end of 4 years, nobody in our companies will earn a wage which does not allow them to aspire to a dignified level of life. It is the middle class standard of living. And we're not talking about minimum wage. We're talking about our own commitment on our companies to make this happen. Not imposed by the authorities, not imposed by a third party. We need to make sure that in our companies we make this commitment and make it personal. Rarely has the world needed so desperately the commanding leadership of Catholic business leaders as it does today. And rarely have we all had the opportunity to make such difference through committed leadership. I submit to you that we make ours this commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo. And now I'm just going to ask for a couple of brief comments. And first to you, Esther, of how do we emphasize the role of organized labor in repairing this social contract, which is so obvious that it needs repair?
So I want to begin by apologizing to Bruno if I've caused any trouble for what I said. It wasn't my intention. And indeed, when we met and talked, we said it's going to be tricky for us both. So if it's tricky for you here, I'm sorry for doing that. Was not my intention. It was to genuinely thank you all for your help in saying that businesses are in favor of a dignified wage and a negotiated wage. The best thing I can probably do is just for 2 minutes, I promise I'll only be 2 minutes, talk a little bit about what it looks like from this side, yeah, because you all know that side. So when I've negotiated change in a company, you're met with a group of workers like this, and you are there. And you have to be very aware that everything is at stake for them, because everything in their life depends on their job. The success of them, their family, their future depends on that job. So there's high stakes. The first thing they want to know, so you say the company's going to have a change, whatever the change is. First thing what they want to know is how will this affect me? How do I fit into the change? How does my job fit into the change? And what do I personally need to do to cooperate with that change and to be able to help that change happen for the benefit of my job and the company? Those two things are seen in people's minds as being very closely associated. The second thing then workers will want to know is, okay, I do all of that, but do I get a stake in it? Like, do I get some part of the success? And that's an important part of the conversation as well. But the third thing, and here's the trickiest thing, is I'd have a good look at me, and they'd say, and why should I trust you to negotiate that change? And the only way you can answer that question in a way that workers will trust you is to say, because I've been involved by the company. They've given us the information. They're being honest with us. We know that they're dealing frankly with us. They've told us where the problems are. They've told us where the future opportunities are. And you know from the past and how we've been dealing together in the past that we've been cooperating, and they've delivered on what they said they would give you. And that really is how, from our point of view, we are able to change the role of the union to being exactly what I know Bruno's vision is, which is that the union becomes part of an organization cooperating and supporting the success of the company also for the purpose of the success of the workers and the community and the society. And that's really the trick of it, is to share information and to deal frankly Nobody wants a sugarcoating over a problem because most workers know if the company's in trouble anyway. But importantly, share information, bring people in, and have the dialogue frankly.
Thank you, Esther. And Silvia, you talked about the need to upskill the workforce. Could you share very briefly a few thoughts on that?
First of all, I think when we are talking about all the challenges that future of work is bringing us as companies and our workers and to the community, we need to start thinking of education. And education is very connected with poverty too, because countries with high level of poverty will have people that cannot achieve the correspondent level of education for the current works and for the future works. So first of all, I come from a country where more than 50% of the children are poor. So with that, it's very difficult to initiate what we are talking about, the future of work. Out of 100 young people that start high school, only 50% will attain the complete high school education, but with the correct level of math. We've been talking yesterday about math and reading and comprehension. Just 16 out of 100 that started. It's a terrible problem, because when we are talking about the challenges that the future will bring these people, they will not be prepared. When we see this as companies, we will have to start again and provide education. That's okay. We know, and currently 80% of our companies are doing that. But we think that for the common good, we need a greater baseline. So what I would like to, talking about having the courage to change, speaking of the young and the poor people, we need to start working as people from companies, business people, trying to work together in a partnership with governments and with politicians to work in education, because it is the base for everything that we need to build together for the future. So that's my piece of this, and I think it is the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia, and my apologize. So now I'd like to ask Sister Alessandra to share with us more on the teaching of Pope Francis about inclusive development, and also the principle of care as work and work as care, which he mentioned to his address in the 2021 International Labor Conference.
Thank you, Bob. I can't speak about Pope Francis' teaching on work and social contracts in 2 minutes, so I'm going to say something about work and care, and I add another principle, another suggestion. First of all, I think we need to re-evaluate the concept of care in our businesses, in our companies, and by considering care as a dimension of work. All forms of work are about relationship with others, because no relationship can survive without care. And so work and care are two fundamental dimensions of human being. Both give dignity to our life on this earth. Yet, work is valued even socially. Not everywhere, but in principle, we value work as a means for dignity, and we know all the social doctrine teachings about this. While care is, in most cases, relegated to private sphere, is underpaid and undervalued mostly because it's associated to women, but this is for another conference. But since, as Bob knows, because he's one of the promoters of this concept, care is work and work is care, we should engage ourselves for rebuilding this harmony between work and care. We can ask ourselves why we consider something widely accepted, our right and duty for vacation, and the same things doesn't happen as a right and duty for taking care for family, our neighbors, as part of work. Maybe as Christian entrepreneurs, we can do something more. We can be pioneer on this. Secondly, in the Economia di Francesco speech, Pope Francis gave us suggestions to look at the world with the eyes of the poorest of the poor. And again, we know that poverty is a sustainability, a multidimensional concept. It's not only lack of money. And Pope Francis said, look at the world with the eyes of the poorest of poor. In the medieval period, as Professor Zamagni quoted, the Franciscan movement was able to create the first economic theories and even the first banks for those in need, because it looked at the world with the eyes of the poorest of the poor. So it's not just doing something for the poor, is acting with them, but putting ourselves in their position in order to say something, to do something. And as Dicastery, we are promoting a project called Doing Theology from Existential Peripheries. Emile Secuda is part of this process. This project gathered 900 of theologians from all around the world, and the research question was, if we go and listen to the peripheries, to the marginalized, what they can reveal about the face of God. It's not just doing something, but being able to understand what we don't know yet, but we can know better about God if we look at the world with the eyes of poor. And this is just something to provoke, and maybe we can give an answer later. And I invite you, if you Google, as Professor Zamain said, doing theology from existential peripheries, you can read the reports from all the regions in the world, and maybe you can be surprised.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think it's been a most challenging and an exhilarating panel. I failed in my determination that we would open it up to the whole group, but I see many of you looking at your watches for coffee break.
You can have 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Bruno. So maybe we can then, Bruno says we can have 15 minutes. For some discussion. So some comments, some questions. Also, I invite the other panelists to address each other as well. So, but maybe we start with some more, okay, so in the back, the gentleman, yes. Okay.
Can I ask in Spanish?
Sí, cierto,
Bueno,
traducción.
esta pregunta va dirigida para Zapata de México. Soy Jorge Sepúlveda, también de México, de Chihuahua. Y a mí esto del salario digno realmente es algo que me apasiona. Me encantó la filmina donde hablas de que el salario digno tiene que ser que permita a nuestros colaboradores vivir en clase media. O sea, creo que te fuiste más arriba del estándar que yo traía. Y me gustaría saber si tienes algún estudio que te diga cuánto debe ser ese salario mínimo, pues al menos en México o en los países que estamos en desarrollo, para pagarles a nuestros colaboradores algo que les permita vivir con dignidad, ¿no? Porque si queremos poner a la persona en el centro, pues mínimo tenemos que cubrir sus necesidades en un trabajo de tiempo completo, ¿no?
If I answer in English to your question, he was basically saying as he is from Mexico and particularly from the state of Chihuahua, and he was saying, so it was already translated. Okay, great, thank you. We have a specific measurement. What we are doing is there's an institution, an autonomous institution in Mexico called the Coneval, and the Coneval has defined, and every 2 years defines exactly what is the income that is necessary for a family of 4 to be able to lead a middle-class family, and that is the objective that we have. So rather than us doing and coming up with our own number, we have adopted the Coneval figure, and what we are doing is we will transition between now and 4 years so that nobody in our companies will be making less than that, so that every single worker will be aspiring or enabled to lead a middle-class standard of living. That's the goal, and right now, to be very specific, it was 13,000 pesos a month.
Okay. Thank you, Arturo, and I'm sure you could follow with some more discussion during the coffee break time. I want to be sure that we have a woman's voice now, and I do want to note that we have a majority women on this panel discussion.
You do? Yes.
I will ask in Spanish as well. En este estudio sí estuvo contemplado el tema de la competitividad que podía perder la empresa y el share del mercado y cuál es el balance que van a hacer sobre esto. Por ahí tenés tu empresa, pero por ahí para empresas más multinacionales creo que estaría bueno contemplar cómo esta variable estuvo involucrada en el proceso de pensamiento.
It is, keep in mind that I told you that I had a deformed mind because I have to, as I look at it as a businessman and then I immediately look at it as an academic, and I couldn't propose something if I hadn't gone through the analysis. Right now we did an analysis by more than 1,000 companies, different companies, located throughout Mexico in all industries from agriculture and others. And what we found out is that in no instance would implementing this solution full-fledged would impact more than, in the extreme cases, 6% of total wages paid. The challenge is not that we cannot afford it. The challenge is that we have never thought about it. We have never asked ourselves that question, if it is simply right for a company to be great and succeeding, and for some of our workers not to be able to reach that standard of living. I want to be very pointy, and so I'm going to leave it at that. Yes, we have the figures. Every company can and will. One of the reasons why we're also doing it for 4 years is to enable everybody to be moving along with the competition, because some people said, well, if I'm the only one in my segment that does it, then I'm at a disadvantage. So we are gonna do it gradually to make sure that everybody can embrace it and without being exposed.
Okay, we're going to have time for 2 more brief comments, and we won't have, too many responses back, but you can discuss with the panelists during the coffee time. So 2 more brief comments. Okay, yes. Yes.
Posso parlare in italiano o in inglese? Allora io volevo parlare con la Lynch. Bruno ci ha suggerito dell'importanza della condivisione con i nostri collaboratori del lavoro. A noi imprenditori, sì, l'obbligatorietà e la moralità di uno stipendio dignitoso, ma a loro la preparazione che dobbiamo fare tutti quanti noi e il suggerimento che la restituzione di un lavoro onesto e dignitoso può portare davvero al successo delle nostre aziende. Una collaborazione che dobbiamo stringere tra noi come dovere e a loro come restituzione per il successo delle nostre aziende. Grazie Lynch.
Grazie a lei. One more comment. Okay.
Hola, buenas tardes.
At the top, there was a
Well, we had up top before, but let's take, no, right in front of you.
No, sorry. I just would like to ask a very short question to Alessandra. I know that EOF is a village of work and care, and there's a lot of work, specifically the work of Professor Jennifer Nedelsky. Could you just share us briefly 2 ideas, because I think could be important for the businessmen to hear.
Okay, we're going to take the 2 comments here, and then Sister Alessandra can respond to you briefly. So the gentleman here, and then I think Professor Zamagna, you wanted to speak as well? Okay, fine. Then just this one. Okay, it's just this one. Okay.
Merci. Ma question sera en français parce que
Oui,
c'est ma
oui.
première langue. Voilà. Je voudrais m'adresser à la sœur pour savoir si on peut avoir le corpus de l'économie de François et quel impact ça peut avoir dans les économies déstructurées que représente aujourd'hui le visage de l'Afrique. Merci beaucoup.
We won't take any more comments, but Sister Alessandra, that's a big question. Can you give us the corpus of the economy of Francesco and also the other question that was raised, but maybe just briefly, and then you could refer them to more information.
Yes, about the economy of Francesco, the process started in 2019, until now people are working divided into 12 villages. You can see the name of villages: Work and Care, Finance and Humanity. Paul was helping this village, and the CO2 of Inequalities, Life and Lifestyles, Business and Peace, Business in Transition. So vocation and profit, and so on, and it has been a kind of a spontaneous process in which young people connected one another all around the world, and for sharing, but also for building something. So now we need to collect everything. I put a person in the Dicastery working especially with this issue to collect from each village the proposals, the projects, the activities already started, in a way that we might have a very clear and database of everything, and this, I think this can help. The African participants were very involved and engaged. Unfortunately, and this is something very sad, it was very sad for us, although as Vatican we did our best to make them to participate, many governments refused to give them the visa. And so we were in communion with them, and we said maybe we can do a second meeting or a third meeting in some place in Africa, in that continent, in a way that if they can't be with us outside, we can go there, and this can be a sign. It's and about Jennifer Nedelsky, I think it's too difficult to answer briefly. I just say Jennifer Nedelsky is a Canadian philosopher sponsoring this idea, care and work. Her proposal, the background is what I said before, and the need for taking care one another as something very important. He said, my dream is to live in a world in which when I meet a person, the first question is, what's your name? Usually the second is, what's your job? I hope that we can switch to a second question being, who are you taking care? Whom are you taking care of? And this is the background. Her proposal is part-time for all, care for all, as part of a dignified job. And I stop here.
Again, thank you to the participants and to our panelists. And I think, Bruno, do you want to say something now?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your cooperation. We will have now 30 minutes of coffee break. You could take the time to discuss with the panelists and among you about the subjects we had here. And we go out with a lot of hope that we can do better. I think this is the most important thing. And be courage to make the change. Thank you very much.